how is the quizzes? Does anybody have a chance to take any yet?
I'm going to take chapter 12 for sure tomorrow, and I may get to 13 tomorrow, I'm not sure.
Okay. 15 and 16 will also be available today, and then maybe the comprehensive quiz. If not, the comprehensive quiz will be available Friday. Okay.
So what, do we have one or two comprehensive quizzes left?
Really, in the syllabus we have 2, but we can adjust that if you think it's
I wasn't sure. So one is over 12 through.
Okay. So
6 through 12. Okay.
So on this Friday, April 26th, you're going to have quizzes 12 through 14 due. Okay. Then yesterday were the annotated bibliography articles. Did you get my emails?
I did.
Sent both of the emails. Okay. Yours was shorter, Hayden, just because I was doing it on my phone.
Oh,
But Lord and Lord, I made a longer email. But they all looked good. You both picked out some really great articles. They look really great. And I like that you guys didn't shy away from the experimental ones. When you try to summarize it, don't get hung up on numbers in that results section. Don't get hung up on the methods. At the most, one sentence to describe that. I mean, if you want to go into depth about it, you can, but you don't need to.
So the biggest part that we really need to pay attention to is the discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, I usually do an opening sentence out of the introductory section, because that gives you a lot of information, and this is why we're doing the research, is what the introduction section is all about. So you have, you start out with an abstract, okay, then you have an introduction, then you have a methods, then you have results, then you have discussion, then you have a conclusion, then you have references, and then sometimes there's like an index or something afterwards. Okay, so we're about that. Don't worry about that. I focus mostly right here and here. This, maybe one sentence just saying is experimental design. You know, you don't have to go into how many people you need to. They just did a survey or something like that. Maybe one sentence, or you can skip it. Or just state it's experimental. Okay. You want to focus here and here. So the abstract is sort of a synopsis. It kind of tells you the beginning, middle, and end. So if you really want to put a sentence in about the methods and results, I'd probably just pull it from the abstract, because they do it in a sentence. You kind of see. Basically, in annotated bibliography, you're doing a smaller version of an abstract. Abstract is usually like a paragraph. You can do like half a paragraph if you want to. Okay? Like about 3, 5 sentences. You don't need to do any more. So just when you're done writing it, go back and say, read it and say, if I hadn't read this article and I'm just reading what I wrote, would I know what this article is about? And if the answer is yes, then you've done a good job. If the article's no, then adjust it. So, but I think you guys can do this. That much problem. So focus on the abstract and the introduction and the discussion or conclusion areas. And don't worry so much about this stuff. Don't worry, don't even mention this stuff. There's just no point. You need to read that part. So that helps. So this Friday quizzes 12 through 14 are due. And then April 30th.
Can I get my phone out and make some notes?
Yeah. And then April 30th is the comprehensive quiz. 7 through 12. It's chapter 7 through 12. Due. And then May 1st, I think we agreed, would be the annotated bibliography. A lot of stuff coming up, huh? Due.
Is it May 1st of Wednesday?
Yeah. Do you want to email
Oh,
it?
that's fine.
Okay. You can email it to me by then. You could, I mean, we could back it up to Friday, but then if you need to redo something, you won't have time to redo it. So
That's fine.
let's do it electronically. Okay. And then, May 3rd will be quizzes 15 through 16 due. And then on May 6th, your last comprehensive quiz on chapters 13 through 16. It'll be a smaller comprehensive quiz. Or I could change this, since this is a smaller, I could change it to a comprehensive quiz that's 1 through 16 if you want some practice on that. It's up to you.
I think the 13th or 16th.
Okay. And then after that, we'll be taking our final. I'm going to try to get the final on the 10th. I'm not sure. I just got something emailed to me. Put a question mark here, final. I'll get back to you on Friday when we're going to take the final. Because, and I'll share some of the final and what I know how the final is going to be done with you. And it is, apparently you were supposed to do some sort of outside volunteer work, but nobody told me about that until just now. So I don't see how you can really be penalized for that. I will discuss that. And then, so yeah, so there was like, you were supposed to participate in some experiment, but nobody said anything about it to me. So here's the comprehensive exam, I mean not the exam itself, but what it says. The exam is designed to assess the student's knowledge of course material related to the stated course objectives, including those objectives linked to general education goals. The exam includes 50 multiple choice items. They will be giving me the exam. I won't see it until we actually administer it. cannot look off each other's tests, of course. You have to sign the hard copy of your test. If you don't, then you'll receive a 0. You cannot have your cell phones or any electronic devices out while you're taking the exam. Okay. And you are given 60 minutes to do it, but you're allowed to take more than 60 minutes if you need so. So that's what I need to figure out is, I need to figure out if this class is not a 60-minute class, how are we going to figure that out for you guys? So,
How long is this class? Is this 15 minutes?
I think it's 50 minutes, isn't it?
I think so.
It would take about 60. Yeah.
We could come early.
Okay. Okay. Well, then maybe we'll just do that then. We'll start it a little earlier on 4th period. And the only thing is, like, you don't have to stop after 60 minutes, okay? It just says you're given at least 60 minutes. So if you want to take more time, then at that point we can move to the guidance office, or I can make an arrangement to come here during 4th period, nobody's here, and you guys can come in as you want to give yourselves up to close to an hour and a half, 2 hours at noon, not counting your lunch. You probably won't need your lunch first.
So did that say that it's just 50 questions multiple choice?
Just
No
50
essay?
questions, multiple choice, no essay. No essay. So you'll probably be given like a scanned card, you know. So that is, yeah, that will be the exam. I have no idea what's on it, so sorry. And we'll just, so you've got a lot of work to do between now and then. Let me check on the date of the final. I think we can adjust the date and don't have to go by what they're doing over on campus because we don't have any distance learners with us. Would you like to take it on the 10th? Would be the last day you can possibly take it. That would give you more time. Would you want to take it earlier, like on the 6th or maybe the 7th or something? Okay. Let me see if I can move it to the 10th. That way it gives everybody time. You know. And then, yeah. So this is our agenda. We have to do this. You can do any of these earlier if you want. Okay, or this is when it has to be due. And it can't be, you know, like sometimes when we don't get stuff done, I'll be kind of flexible about it. There's not a lot of flexibility I can have with this because we're getting to the end of the semester, unless there's something like, you know, that you're having to deal with that's in addition to normal stressors. In which case we can give you an incomplete if you have some sort of tragedy or something. Okay. And an incomplete, I'm not sure if you're aware, an incomplete is where you say, I need more time to get my work done. I'm going to take an I, and then I'll make an arrangement with you to finish it at a later time, and then you get your grade after that. Okay. So that's that. Oh, did you guys know that? Yeah. Maybe I should write that down in an email and send it to you as well. So that you guys have that. Or I still have the midterm. I forgot to give it back to you. Asked for it. I'm sorry. I'll give it to you as a relief class, okay? That way you'll have that to study for. So, when last we spoke, we were talking about psychological disorders, the DSM-4, and I did not bring my DSM-4 today because I thought, well, MJ is not going to be here, So let's wait until he's here so that everybody can have a chance to sort of thumb through it and get that experience. Okay, so we are moving past classifying disorders. Hey, you asked a question at the very end about autism, which we're not being quizzed on or graded on. It's not one of the disorders. Because for whatever reason they chose to not focus on childhood disorders, and that's one that would be considered a childhood disorder. Do you have any other questions about that we should answer?
I just didn't know what classified as one is Asperger's and the other is autism.
You can look at that when we put up the DSM-4, but the major difference is in order to be Asperger's versus autistic, then you would have to have you have to be at least within the average range for an IQ. Autism, you could be anywhere. You could be high, low, medium, okay? And then a criteria for autism is that you would have to have some sort of language impairment, and with Asperger's, you would not have a classically or traditional language impairment. Although they do have some language differences. And when we talk about pragmatic language, do you remember that? The practical use of language, and I said, look at that shelf, you know, if I want to describe the shelf, it's like some 6 or 7 shelves in the corner of the room somewhere. That's practical language. Someone who doesn't have good pragmatic language might use like 100 words to describe that. So sometimes people with Asperger's will have that kind of pragmatic language problem, or they won't use enough words. They'll just be like, it's that thing in the corner of the room. But they have good vocabulary and good usage of language. But really most of the pragmatic stuff has to do socially. So like you say, hey, how are you doing today? Then your response to me might be, I'm good, how are you? Is that what you say? Yeah, so they might be like good. Because it's a conversation opener, you know, and they don't realize it's a conversation opener. They don't understand the pragmatic use of language. That you're really saying, the response would be, I'm good. Oh, how are you? You know, so when you work on therapy, that's one of the things you work on, is to teach them, okay, what's the weather today, you know, out there? And they might say, well, you know, it's partly sunny out there. It's about 66 degrees. They don't really get, like, I'm just trying to make conversation with you. I'm just, you know, they call it BSing, you know. There's no BSing with Asperger's people. And they can compulsively talk about things that they want to talk about and not what other people talk about. Okay. So it's the same with autism, except usually they have a language impairment where their vocabulary and their language is lower. And they have to get speech therapy. So, I mean, there's lots of differences, but those are 2 critical differences. So let's move into anxiety disorders. There are lots and lots of anxiety disorders, and anxiety disorders, right on the top of page 459, it says, anxiety disorders, fear and apprehension. If you remember anything about what is an anxiety disorder, remember fear and apprehension, okay? 2 big keys. If you're having fear and apprehension, or fear and or apprehension, most likely you are having some sort of anxiety. Anxiety is very future-oriented. Okay, this is the difference between anxiety and depression. Depression is all about the past. Anxiety is all about the future. Okay? You feel depressed when you think about the past. And you think about things that have been hurtful and things that have been sad. With anxiety, a lot of times it's, I'm not worried, even though you may have anxiety because of things in the past, your anxiety, that emotional response, is actually kind of worrying about what's going to be happening in the future. You know, so anxiety is all about fear, apprehension, worry, future. Okay, that's how it's oriented. It's excessive to that we all have, and there are different kinds of disorders. They talk about generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and agoraphobia, and OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. Phobic disorders, social anxiety disorder. What they don't talk about is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, NOS, which is like a very mild, generalized anxiety as well. What's another one they don't mention in here? disoriented, fear and apprehension of what's going to happen next. Generalized anxiety disorder is a worry wart. Have you met a worry wart? Someone who's just like worries about anything and everything all the time. Yes. It's generalized because they worry about everything, okay? And it's excessive to the point to where it's a problem for them, okay? They worry about, did I park straight in that parking spot? And if not, they have to pull out and move back in and pull out and then move back in until they're happy. They worry about what's going to happen to you at the prom, you know? What dress are you going to wear? Oh my gosh, Lauren, you haven't picked out your dress yet? When is the prom? You know, this is worry about, are we going to pay our bills today? Are we going to be able to pay our bills this month? Well, we've been able to pay our bills every other month. Why wouldn't we be able to pay our bills this month? It can be worrying about anything and everything, basically, okay? And with most anxiety disorders, most disorders, it would need to be present for about 6 months for most disorders. So it has to be for a marked period of time, okay? And they say it's about 6 months, okay? Panic disorder. Let me skip panic disorder and come back to that. Agoraphobia. Have we heard of this?
I've heard of it, but I can't remember.
Agoraphobia is a fear of being outside.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like people that are afraid to leave their house.
Yeah. Phobia is fear, right? Phobia. Arachnophobia is a fear of
Spiders.
right. We don't really use those terms, arachnophobia. When we diagnose people, we say specific phobia of like an animal or
Afraid of spiders.
Yeah. Are you afraid of spiders? No. Well, you can have a nice little look there on page 460. Can you touch the picture of the spider?
Yeah, I mean that's not.
Okay, so it's
I don't
not
want,
that bad.
I don't want a spider on me.
You're a snake guy, not a spider guy. You like things with less legs, not with more legs. Okay. Okay. Yeah, they just don't like to be in public places. A lot of people say they're afraid to go out of their house. That's an extreme agoraphobia. But sometimes they just don't like to be in public places. Sometimes it's like, well, I can go to work if I work in a small area, but I don't like to be in like crowded bars and stuff like that. I don't want to be in grocery stores where there's lots of people and humming about, you know. And it would be, you would have to restrict their normal activities because just the dysfunction part, remember we talked about. OCD, the key here is obsessive compulsive. You obsess over something, and because you're stuck on that and you're constantly obsessing over it, you have to engage in some sort of ritual, which is the compulsive part. The ritual eases your anxiety about what you're obsessing about. Okay? And it could be, they usually obsess about a variety of things. One common thing that we talk about is germs. So someone who might obsess about germs, we call them germ-phobic people, right? Who every day they would have sanitizer on their desk, which a lot of us do, and they would compulsively use it over and over and over and over again. Okay, every time they touch it, they would be afraid to shake hands with you, maybe, if they don't get your germs. They would want to bring their own plastic silverware, possibly, instead of eating off the plates and stuff in the cafeteria. There was a guy I knew, well, I didn't know, I heard about it when I was a child, and he basically had developed OCD, and he would shower like 10 times a day. And he would shower so often that he was actually, and he would scrub himself, that he was actually having skin problems, where he was scrubbing the first layer of his skin off and developing, you know, rashes and such forth from that. And then convinced that the rashes were from germs, which weren't. It was because he was drying out his skin too much. I don't know what happened to it.
Have you ever seen? Did you ever watch the show Deal or No Deal? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
What's it? Howie Mandel?
Yes.
He's supposed to have OCD, right?
Okay.
typing, they want to touch this part. Yeah,
That would make sense. And then he's probably, as soon as they're going to commercial, you know. Which is actually an improvement to even be able to do that. That might be like a systematic therapeutic thing. It's like he's in a stage of being able to do this and eventually trying to do that, you know. So it's like at first he may not have been able to touch anybody at all. And now he's like, I can give you a bump. How's that, you know? So that's OCD. There are people who, the worrisome behaviors might be over a variety of things. And basically, if you have OCD, you would be doing so many rituals, compulsions. Okay, it's the same thing. I'm using this interchangeably. So many rituals that would be taking up about 2 to 3 hours a day of your time, which is a lot of rituals. So these people are laying in bed and they can't sleep because they can't remember to turn off the stove. So then they get up and out of bed and they go over to the stove and they check to make sure the stove's off. Then they go lay back down in bed. And they go, wait, did I really turn off the stove or did I just think I turned off the stove? So then they get up again and they check again. They do it 3, 4, 5 times. You're constantly going out checking the car. You know, did I lock my car? So the ritual will occur because of that obsession where they'll do little tricks like doing things in odd numbers. You make sure it's off. You know, 1, 2, 3, I know it's on. 1, 2, 3, I know it's off. So that actual motion, it's like a procedural memory thing, right? Helps them remember when they turn it off. They have to go through that ritual. So, yeah. That's kind of, sometimes people are intensive doing these reads as part of the ritual. Or they could have some long ritual of getting ready in the morning where they have to like completely like sanitize their body or, you know, whatever it is. So phobic disorders are, you have a fear, it's an excessive, irrational, remember, irrational fear is a phobia, okay, of something specific, spiders, bees, whatever. And you generally, you can get a phobic disorder in a variety of ways. You can get it through watching someone else be fearful. You can get it through, actually, like I had a kid one time that was stung by a bee, and after that he developed a phobia of bees. It was a pretty persistent phobia. Maybe you get bit by a snake. You might like snakes now, but if you got, maybe you might not even been bit before, but if you get bit by one day and it really scares you, then you might be scared of all snakes at that point, and not even be able to watch them on television. You know, they can be really persistent. And what a lot of people are scared of is blood. That's a pretty common thing, right? But there's a bit of rationality to that. You know, blood is important, but some people are so afraid of getting shots and needles that it's, you know, it's something none of us really like. But then the phobic person would like scream and fight. You'd have to hold them down, and yeah, it would be pretty bad. Social anxiety disorder is when you're afraid of social situations. Mostly like they do better with one-on-one, but then anytime they feel like they're being praised by other people, they might have some anxiety. They don't want to be judged. They're easily embarrassed. They don't like being watched. These people don't like going to bars. A very mild form of this that's not necessarily a disorder is some people, when you're going to go out to eat and you pull up and the parking lot's really full, and every single time they're like, oh no, I don't want to go in there. And it's not just because they don't want to wait, it's because they don't want to be around those people. Which we all kind of do that to some extent, but it would be that plus a lot more, you know. Don't want to go to bars, don't want all of that kind of stuff.
So these people would not do well in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah, or, yeah, I've never met anybody with social anxiety from New York City, so I don't know. Either they wouldn't do well in New York City or they wouldn't do well in certain
situations, like parties and such, where maybe they can walk on the sidewalk. Because in that situation, they may not feel like they're being judged, right? But at a party, they would feel like they're being judged, okay? So that's social anxiety. Now let's move back to panic attacks. I'm going to describe a panic attack first. A panic attack is this anxiety, it's like an anxiety attack to the nth degree, to where your heart races, you can break out in sweat. A lot of times people misinterpret it, all these bodily sensations, and feel like they're having a heart attack, okay? And in fact, if you take their blood pressure can actually be elevated. A lot of people end up in ER with panic attacks, thinking they're having a heart attack, okay? It's something that can happen to a lot of people. A panic disorder is when that happens over and over again, and you don't really know why. You don't know what's causing this person to suddenly go into this state of super duper fear. Sort of like our fight and flight response system. You know, that's what's happening. That sympathetic part of our nervous system has just gone haywire, and it is just elevated, and you're in a panicky state, and you feel an impending doom, or most likely you feel like you are dying. Okay, that's your cognitive appraisal, is that you feel like something has gone wrong with my body and I'm dying. But what's happened is it's anxiety that has affected your sympathetic nervous system, and it's caused the epinephrine to pump through your blood system, and for you to get highly aroused to where all of this is happening, and then you're having a misappraisal of what's happening in your body, and you think you're dying. Okay? So if you've ever been really super duper scared, somebody jumps out of a corner, and you realize your heart's racing, imagine that happening to you, but not knowing why. It just suddenly happens, because your cognitive appraisal, as soon as you see the person and you know them, your cognitive appraisal is, oh, I'm safe. But imagine nobody's walking around the corner, and you're just walking, and suddenly you feel terrified, and it lasts for 10 to 11 minutes, and you have no idea why. Wouldn't you feel like you're dying? I mean, it's really scary. So that's what a panic disorder is. Now, with any anxiety disorder, you can have panic attacks that go with it. Okay, and Howie Mandel was forced to shake somebody's hand, and he was fearful of that. Then he could have a panic attack. He could have a panic attack at the mere thought of it if it was bad enough. You can have panic attacks from phobias. People with generalized anxiety disorder, sometimes they worry so much they give themselves panic attacks. Okay, so panic disorder is when that's happening, but we don't know exactly why it's happening. We haven't figured that out yet. It's just happening over and over again. So that is anxiety disorders. Okay, somatoform disorders are they're just disorders that focus on the physical aspects of your body, where you're once again misappraising. Okay, you have that cognitive appraisal system, you're misappraising something, and you think that you're having some sort of physiological response, and you might even have a physiological response, but when you have a headache, for instance, instead of just appraising that it's a headache, you think you have brain cancer, okay, and you're convinced of it, and you go to one doctor, and he says no, you have all the tests run, and you go to another doctor, and he says no, and you go to another doctor, and he says no, you're convinced you have brain cancer. That's hypochondriasis. Hypochondriac, we've heard that, okay. So that's hypochondriasis. A somatization disorder is pretty much about the same thing, but there's no specific disease. It's like you have headaches, and you have stomach aches, and you have a lot of pain, and it's very generalized, and there's really no disease that would explain it. You're going to the doctor, and the doctor's really confused, and they run all these tests, and they're just like, I can't figure out what's wrong with you. Now, sometimes that happens. Sometimes there is something wrong with you, but the doctors just don't know the answer, okay? But if they don't know the answer, they like to say it's something psychological. And then until later on, they find out what it is. And so then it's like, no, there's no identifiable physical disease that would explain it, or it would have to be multiple diseases or something like that. So that's a somatization disorder. And then conversion disorder, Freud talked about that some. Conversion is where maybe we noticed it a lot in the, what was it, World War I or something like that. I forget which war it was, but I don't know. There was some major war, and they noticed that soldiers that were supposed to be going out and battling suddenly were coming down with paralysis. And it was because they had so much psychological distress and so much anxiety about the thought of going out there and having to fight that it manifested in the form of paralysis, to where even though they couldn't move their legs, they believed 100% that they could not move their legs. That's a conversion disorder. Okay, you're converting whatever's going up, the anxiety that you have in your head, into a specific body part, and that body part will keep you from doing what you're being told to do. Okay, so that way you can reduce your anxiety. Okay, and then somatoform disorders is just the overall arching explanation for all disorders that are of a bodily nature like that. Okay, that's all somatoform means. There's somatoform, and then underneath somatoform disorders, there's conversion disorder, hyperhidrosis, factitious disorders that we talked about, and somatization disorder. Okay, just like with anxiety disorders, there's generalized anxiety underneath it, anxiety, NOS, phobias, panic disorders. Okay. Dissociative disorders, and I'm going to give you guys a key here. Okay, when you look at these green headings and your text, anxiety disorder, fear and apprehension. Remember that. Associate those two things together. The next one is somatoform disorders, body and mind. Associate that together. Okay? Dissociative disorders, disruptions of identity or awareness. Associate those two things together, and you can figure out almost any overarching question. Okay? So a dissociative disorder is a disruption in sort of your thoughts, your memories, or your awareness or your identity. Okay? Dissociative amnesia. Well, we know what amnesia is, right? Okay, you forget things. You don't remember personal information. Dissociative fugue means flight. Okay, fugue means flight. So dissociative fugue is when you wake up and you are in a different place, and these people kind of wake up one day and they just start a brand new life and forget their next life, and they can go on for about 6 months and they just are missing people, you know, and then suddenly one day they remember their old life. It's dissociative fugue. Okay, it happens. It usually happens from some sort of traumatic event. Dissociative amnesia usually comes back as mysteriously as it appears, and often is due to some sort of traumatic event. Okay. Dissociative identity disorder, otherwise known as multiple personality disorder, that lasts. That stays around for a while, and it usually occurs because of some sort of trauma in your childhood. I think they linked it to sexual. A lot of the women had sexual abuse in childhood. And these people are out there and they're living their lives, and a lot of times they don't know that they have different personalities, different quote unquote personalities. They don't know that they have a different consciousness that's a part of their brain that sort of takes over in certain situations. What they do know is when you ask them, but they may not even realize it, it might be kind of unconscious. When you start asking questions, what they do know is they have certain blackouts. They don't remember certain things. They don't remember a day. They don't remember a couple of hours in a day. What did I do? I don't really remember. We all do that to a degree. These people have these blackouts, and it's extremely rare. All of these are extremely rare. Anxiety is very common. Okay, somatoforms, less common. Dissociative stuff, extremely rare that we know of so far. So the point of a dissociative identity disorder when you do therapy is to merge the identities, not get rid of them. Okay? Because they're actually all a part of who you are. They're just certain identities are there to protect you. It's sort of they're like made-up personalities that are a part of you. There's the child Lauren, you know, that was the 4-year-old that got abused, and then there's the adolescent Lauren, who, and each one might have a different name. You know, so like if somebody called you Lori when you were a little girl, then maybe your child Lauren might be Lori, you know. Adolescent Lauren might be more, I know who I am and don't mess with me, and she might be the tough guy, you know. And then there might come up with another personality, you know. Sometimes it might be maybe you feel like you need a man to protect you. I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying, and you might come up with a male personality, one that is very macho and very one you would think would be there to protect you. So all of this kind of happens. So that's dissociative disorders. Then we move into mood disorders. Disorders of mood include pretty much about any mood except for anxiety, you know. It's depression and mania. And let's describe what depression and mania are. In a normal day, or in a normal week, let's say this is our baseline, this is our homeostasis. Remember we talked about homeostasis? Okay. And this is our mood. It kind of goes up, might kind of go down. Sometimes it goes up for a little bit, sometimes it goes down for a little bit. And this is pretty much normal, okay? This is a normal week. People who have depression, they are down very low. And they stay down for a certain amount of time. And then they come back up. Maybe not even all the way up. Maybe sometimes they do get all the way up. Okay? That's depression. They're sad. They're lonely. They feel worthless. They might lose weight. They might gain weight. They might sleep too much. They may not be able to sleep at all. It is depressive. It is depression. You have felt depression at some point in your life and you know it. Okay? And it's most likely situational. This major depression goes on for at least 2 weeks, and it's significantly lower than what you're feeling. These people could be suicidal, or they may not be suicidal. Some people go way down low and it's severe, and some people go kind of low and it's mild, and then some people are moderate. Okay? Generally speaking, a depressive episode, which you have to have at least one to have a major depressive disorder, will last 2 weeks. 2 weeks constant. That's a depressive episode. There are people who have recurrent experiences where they go down low, then they'll come up, and then they'll go way down low again. That's recurrent, okay? Sometimes it lasts for 2 weeks, sometimes it lasts for 3 weeks. Then there are some people who are dysthymic, okay? Dysthymic is a milder version of depression, milder version that goes on for about 2 years. Sometimes they just kind of stay there all the time. These are people who you just think, why is that person always depressed? That's dysthymia, okay? I think it's 2 years. It might be one. I'll have to look it up. But 2 years isn't that common for dysthymia. But it's at least 1 year.
So what if moderate depression lasts longer?
That can happen. That can happen. You get into a couple of more advanced things there that you have to know. But moderate depression can last longer than 2 weeks. Okay? Sometimes people will call that chronic depression, and sometimes people call it double depression. Some people argue, well, you can be like this, and you can last a long time, and it's just major depression that's chronic, or you could have both dysthymia and major depression, to where you're pretty much low all the time, but then every 2 weeks or so, you'll go down, then you'll come back, but you're never really up here where everybody else is. That's called double depression, okay? You don't need to know that. You just need to know depression is low, okay? Now, mania is the opposite of depression, okay? So here's our homeostasis, okay? Right here, this is our line. I wish I had different colors, I'm sorry. Mania is where this is the normal up and down, right? Mania is where you go way up, and then you come hours a night. They may not eat. It's always, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, and they're very dysfunctional because they're trying to do a million things and cannot get one thing done. Okay, that's someone who has mania.
Then there's hypomania, where you're a little lower. These people just look like they're on cocaine all the time. Like seriously, they're actually very functional. And it lasts for, I think less than 4 days. But
But they also can have ideas of grandiosity. If you ever, I don't know if you've been around someone who's like been a little bit of cocaine. Okay, that's kind of like, cocaine kind of makes you a little hypomanic. Like they can be very functional. If you take too much coke though, you're going to kind of go up here, you know, start to break down. But people who are hypomanic, I mean, they can actually just be pretty functional, okay?
so here's hypomania, here's mania. The thing about hypomania and mania, it's called euphoria. And it feels good. You like being up there.
It feels good. You feel like you're on top of the world, okay? Down here, this is dysphoria. You don't feel good. I want to throw a crap or something like that. I mean, you just feel bad, okay? You feel bad. Okay. So, if you've ever had a manic or hypomanic episode, you would be considered bipolar. But what usually accompanies people with bipolar is also depression. So they have a tendency to not just be high, but then to drop way down low, and then come way up high, and then drop way down low. And their highs usually only a couple of days, and their lows are usually for weeks at a time. Okay? These people are supposed to be on mood stabilizers. This is a chemical imbalance in the brain. And they need to be on a mood stabilizer because something's not right.